Filtration and Crystallization by KayScience.com. We're going to learn about how to use filtration and crystallization to obtain 100% pure salt from rock salt. Rock salt is found deep underground and is a mixture of salt, mud, and sand. The first stage is to grind the rock salt. You need a piece of apparatus called a mortar where you place the rock salt inside the mortar. You then use another piece of apparatus called a pestle, which grinds the rock salt from larger pieces into smaller pieces. This is the mortar and this is the pestle. So the first stage is just grinding the salt and mud into smaller pieces. It's very important to grind the salt and mud into smaller pieces. This makes it much easier to dissolve the salt in the next stage. Larger pieces of crystals take longer to dissolve. Smaller pieces of crystals take less time to dissolve. The second stage is making a solution. To make a solution, we need a beaker full of water. When the grinded rock salt is added to the water and is stirred, the insoluble mud sinks to the bottom, whereas these small dots represent the soluble salt dissolving. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. So now we have a mixture of water, dissolved salts, and mud. The mud and the salts have been separated from each other, but now it's time to separate the mud from the salt water. Stage 3 is filtration. This piece of apparatus is the filter funnel, and it slots into the conical flask. This is the filter paper, and it's specially folded to fit inside the filter funnel. The pores in the filter paper are too small to allow large insoluble substances through. Therefore, the mud is trapped in the filter paper as shown here, and we call this the residue. The residue is the trapped insoluble mud. The mud is too big to pass through the pores. What does pass through the filter paper is the water and the dissolved salts. This is known as the filtrate. The water and soluble salts are small enough to pass through the small pores in the filter paper. So now we've separated the water and soluble salts from the mud. The aim is now to form big salt crystals. Stage 4 is to heat the solution until saturated. So it's important to know how to set up the apparatus safely. You need a tripod and a gauze to safely hold the apparatus which is going to get heated, a Bunsen burner to heat the solution, a beaker which is going to be filled with water, an evaporating dish which will contain the solution of salt water. This water will boil to safely heat the solution of salt water. The evaporating dish contains the solution of salt water. This is the boiling water that will heat the filtrate. These two arrows represent the water in the filtrate becoming a gas. This is caused by the boiling water below being heated, which then heats the water in the filtrate to turn it into a gas by evaporation. It's really important you do not overheat the filtrate. This can cause some crystals to spit out which can be hot, and this is a potential hazard. To reduce this risk, you need to ensure that the filtrate does not get too hot by placing the evaporating dish on top of a beaker containing boiling water. This means there's almost a barrier in between the Bunsen burner and the evaporating dish, so it heats at a much slower pace. It's question time. Attempt these questions to check your understanding. Now we should have a solution that is saturated. We are now ready to leave this solution in an evaporating dish on the side so that the water can evaporate very slowly and form big crystals by crystallization. Stage 5 is evaporation. Stage 5 is very simple. We have our saturated salt solution in the evaporating dish, where we then leave it for a few days and the water slowly evaporates, represented by these 4 blue arrows. As the water slowly evaporates, crystallization then takes place. The water has now evaporated because its boiling point is much lower. The salt leaves the solution and forms crystals. In any experiment you ever do, you always need to think about hazards. Hazards is something that causes harm. A hazard to consider in this experiment are the hot salt crystals spitting out when heating the saturated solution. Risk is the chance that the hazard causes harm. Reducing the risk of a hazard causing you any harm is to wear goggles, as they will protect your eyes against any hot salts spitting out and potentially damaging your eyes. Not overheating the filtrate also reduces the risk, as this decreases the chance that hot crystals will spit out and potentially damage your eyes or any other part of your body. Pause the video here to practice the keywords. The answers will follow. Press pause to answer the questions. The answers will follow. If stuck, just rewatch the video. Press pause to go through your answers and make any corrections to your mistakes. And don't forget to visit KayScience.com for more videos, worksheets and quizzes at KayScience.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe.